My father threw my suitcases onto the driveway in the pouring rain, screaming that I had stolen his retirement savings. Behind him, his new wife smirked, thinking she had won. I drove away in tears, but they forgot one thing. I managed the bank's fraud department, and I had already flagged the real thief. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The rain was coming down in sheets, the kind of heavy, relentless downpour that turns the world into a gray blur. My windshield wipers were working furiously, slapping back and forth, but they could barely keep up with the water hammering against the glass. It matched the pounding in my head. I had just come from a 12-hour shift at the bank, my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets and auditing logs, and my left leg, the one that still ached when the weather turned specifically like this, was throbbing with a dull, persistent pain. I pulled into the driveway of the house I had grown up in. It was a beautiful, sprawling colonial that my father, Robert, had designed himself back when he was still an active architect. It used to be a place of warmth, smelling of my mother's baking and the cedar wood my dad loved to work with. But lately, the air inside had changed. It felt sterile, calculated. I turned off the ignition, dreading the walk to the front door. My leg was stiff. 6 months ago, a drunk driver had T-boned my sedan, leaving me with a shattered tibia and a long road to recovery. I was mostly healed, but nights like this reminded me that I wasn't the same person I used to be. I grabbed my cane from the passenger seat. I didn't need it all the time anymore, but tonight, the fatigue was winning. I didn't even get the key in the lock before the door flew open. Usually, my dad would be in his study or watching the news. But tonight, he was standing right there in the doorway, blocking the entrance. His face, usually soft with age and the gentle weariness of a widower, was twisted into an expression I didn't recognize. It was a mix of fury and heartbreak that stopped me cold on the wet porch. "Dad," I asked, my voice barely carrying over the sound of the rain. "What's wrong? Is it your heart?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached behind him, grabbed a heavy duffel bag, and heaved it out onto the porch. It landed with a wet thud at my feet. Then came a box of my books. Then my coat. "Dad, what are you doing?" I stepped forward, reaching out to touch his arm, but he recoiled as if I were contagious. "Don't touch me," he spat, his voice shaking. "I want you gone, Isabella, tonight, right now." My brain couldn't process the visual information. My things were getting soaked. My father, the man who had sat by my hospital bed for weeks just 6 months ago, was looking at me with pure hatred. "I don't understand," I stammered, the cold rain starting to seep through my blazer. "Did something happen?" "You know exactly what happened," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I went to the safe, Isabella. The cash is gone, the emergency fund is gone, $5,000 cleared out, and don't tell me it wasn't you. I found the envelope in your room." "What?" I shook my head, water dripping from my nose. "I haven't been in your safe. I don't even know the new combination." "Stop lying." He stepped out onto the porch, ignoring the rain soaking his shirt. "Linda told me she saw you coming out of the study yesterday when I was at the grocery store. She didn't want to say anything because she wanted to trust you, but when I found the money missing, she showed me where you hid the envelope under your mattress." "Linda is lying," I said, my voice rising. "Dad, think about this. I'm a senior bank auditor. I make good money. Why would I steal $5,000 from you? That makes no sense." "Because you're jealous," he yelled. "You've been jealous ever since she moved in. You hate that I'm happy. You wanted to punish me, didn't you? You wanted to ruin our trip." He was breathing hard, his face red. I looked past him into the warm, dry hallway. Standing there, just out of the reach of the rain, was Linda. She was wearing a silk cashmere sweater, her arms crossed lightly over her chest. She looked perfectly composed, the picture of a concerned stepmother. But as my eyes locked with hers, the concern vanished for a split second. She tilted her head slightly and offered me a small, tight smile. It wasn't a smile of sympathy. It was a smile of victory. Robert, honey, Linda called out, her voice smooth and sickeningly sweet. Don't get yourself sick out there. She's not worth the pneumonia. Just close the door. Dad, please, I begged, shivering now. My leg hurts. I have nowhere to go tonight. Let's just talk about this inside. Let me show you my bank record. DS, I can prove I didn't take it. I don't want your proofs. I don't want your lies, Robert said, stepping back across the threshold. You've broken my heart, Isabella. I thought we were a team. I see now that Linda was right about you all along. You're selfish. He grabbed the handle of the heavy oak door. Dad, look at me, I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. He paused, looking at me one last time. His eyes were wet, but not from the rain. You're not the daughter I raised. The door slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the night. I heard the deadbolt slide home, a lock I had installed for him myself for extra security. I stood there alone in the dark, the rain mingling with the hot tears streaming down my face, realizing that the physical pain in my leg was nothing compared to the agony of being erased by the only parent I had left. I don't remember driving to the motel. The journey was a blur of red taillights and blinding oncoming beams. I operated on autopilot, my body going through the motions while my mind remained frozen on that front porch. I checked into the cheapest motel I could find on the outskirts of town, the Starlight Inn, a place that had clearly not seen starlight or a renovation since 1985. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon pledge, a chemical attempt to mask years of neglect. I dropped my wet duffel bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. My leg was throbbing with a vengeance now, a sharp, rhythmic spike of pain that radiated from my shin up to my hip. I rubbed the scar tissue absently, staring at the blank television screen. $5,000. It was such a specific, petty amount. It was enough to be a felony, enough to hurt, but small enough to be cash on hand. My father, Robert, was a creature of habit. He kept cash in a wall safe in his study for emergencies, a habit from his grandfather. He had shown me the safe when I was 10. He trusted me with everything. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. I had 3 missed calls from my Aunt Sarah, my dad's sister, and a text from Linda. I opened Linda's text first. It had come through 5 minutes after the door slammed. I told him to go easy on you, Isabella. It breaks my heart to see families fight over money. If you just return what's left, maybe I can talk him into letting you come by for Christmas. Maybe. Linda. I stared at the screen, a laugh bubbling up in my chest. It was a hysterical, dry sound that hurt my throat. She was incredible. Even in a private text, she was maintaining the persona. She knew I hadn't taken the money. She had planted that envelope. She had staged the entire thing. But she was writing this text for an audience. She knew there was a chance I'd show it to my dad or that he might check her phone. She was covering her tracks before I even thought to look for them. I dialed my dad, straight to voicemail. I dialed the landline. It rang once, then went to busy. Someone had taken the phone off the hook. I collapsed backward onto the scratchy bedspread, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The shock was beginning to wear off, replaced by a cold, hard knot of realization in my stomach. This wasn't just about $5,000. Linda had been in the house for 4 months. In that time, she had slowly engineered a wedge between us. First, it was the comments about how busy I was with work, suggesting I didn't have time for Dad. Then, it was the accidental misplacing of messages I left for him. Now this. She wanted me out, completely out, and she had succeeded. I rolled onto my side, curling my knees to my chest to try and alleviate the ache in my leg. I felt helpless. I felt like a child who had been scolded for something she didn't do. I wanted to scream, to drive back there and break a window, to force him to listen. But then, the professional part of my brain, the part that spent 40 hours a week hunting down embezzlers and tracking illicit wire transfers, flickered to life. I closed my eyes and visualized the house. I visualized the study. I visualized the safe. Linda thought she had won. She thought she had exiled me, cut off my access, and secured her place as the sole influence over a lonely, retired man with a significant pension and a paid-off estate. She thought she was dealing with a hurt daughter. She didn't realize she was dealing with a senior auditor who specialized in forensic asset tracing. I sat up, wiping the tears from my cheeks. I reached into my purse and pulled out my laptop. It was wet on the casing, but it booted up. Linda had made a critical error. She assumed that because she had physical control of the house, she had control of the information. She assumed that by taking the house key, she had locked me out of their lives. But she had forgotten one crucial thing. 6 months ago, when Dad was worried about phishing scams targeting Sini, he had given me power of attorney specifically to monitor his digital security. I had set up his entire network, the Wi-Fi, the smart home devices, and the banking alerts. And while she might have changed the Netflix password, I knew for a fact she didn't know how to access the router logs or the backend of the trust portfolio. I cracked my knuckles, the sound loud in the quiet motel room. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. To understand why this betrayal felt like a physical amputation, you have to understand what the last 2 years had been like. My mother passed away from a sudden aneurysm 2 years ago. It broke my father. Robert was a brilliant architect, a man who could visualize entire skyscrapers in his mind, but without my mother, he couldn't figure out how to make toast. He withered. He stopped eating. He stopped going to the grief counseling sessions I booked for him. I was 26, just starting my climb at the bank, but I moved back home immediately. I cooked every meal. I paid every bill. I sat with him in the dark living room for hours, just holding his hand while he cried. When I had my car accident 6 months ago, it was the first time I had been the one needing care, and surprisingly, it seemed to wake him up. Taking care of me gave him a purpose again. We were a team. We were survivors. Then came Linda. She didn't meet him at a grocery store or a library. She was a referral from a neighbor who said Dad needed to spruce up the house to move on. Linda was an interior designer. She swept in with fabric swatches and a dazzling smile. She was 50 but looked 10 years younger, impeccably dressed, always smelling of expensive vanilla and sandalwood. At first, I was grateful. Dad was smiling again. He was shaving every day. He was talking about paint colors instead of tombstones. But the red flags started popping up within weeks. I'd come home early from work to find her in parts of the house that didn't need redesigning, like the garage where Dad kept his old financial records, or the hallway closet where the safe was hidden behind a false panel. When I confronted her, she would laugh it off with a terrifying casualness. "Oh, Isabella, you startled me. I was just looking for the structural blueprints to see if we could knock down this wall. Your father mentioned the lighting was bad here." She was smooth, too smooth. She never argued with me. If I disagreed with a design choice, she would immediately defer to me, saying, "Of course, Isabella knows best." But then, later that night, I'd hear her whispering to Dad, "I just feel like she doesn't want you to have nice things, Robert. It's like she wants to keep you living in a mausoleum." She drove a leased Mercedes that she claimed she owned. She talked vaguely about clients in the city, but never seemed to actually be working on any other projects. And then there was the speed of the relationship. She moved in 3 months after their first coffee date. 3 days after she moved in, she asked me about the house deed. "I'm just curious," she had said, pouring herself a glass of my dad's expensive scotch. "Does the title transfer to you automatically, or is it in a trust? I want to make sure Robert's assets are protected from, taxes." "It's in a trust," I had said shortly, not looking up from my book, "and I'm the trustee." Her eyes had flickered, just for a microsecond, with something sharp and cold. "Smart," she had said, "very smart." I knew then that she was dangerous. I tried to warn Dad, but he was intoxicated by her attention. He called me paranoid. He told me I was being unfair to a woman who just wanted to love him. Now, sitting in the motel room, I realized I had been playing checkers while she was playing chess. She knew she couldn't get to the big money, the house, the pension, while I was the gatekeeper. She needed to discredit me. She needed to destroy my character so thoroughly that Dad would revoke my status as trustee and hand the keys to the kingdom over to her. Framing me for stealing $5,000 was just the opening move. It was the wedge she needed to physically remove me from the property. I looked at my laptop screen. The blue light illuminated the darkroom. I logged into the bank's secure portal, not to access Dad's accounts, which would be unethical without his permission, but to access public records and a specific, expensive background check software we used for high-level corporate vetting. "Okay, Linda," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's see who you really are." I typed in her name, Linda Marston. The search wheel spun. I had tried Googling her before, of course, and found a generic LinkedIn profile and a few Facebook photos of flower arrangements. But this software dug deeper. It looked for aliases, expunged records, and civil lawsuits in different counties. The first result popped up. No criminal record found for Linda Marston. My heart sank. Was she really Jew? Sent a mean, greedy woman. Was I projecting the criminal mastermind persona onto her? Then I looked closer at her credit report header, which was linked to her rental history. There was a discrepancy in her social security number trace. A specific sequence of numbers that had been issued in Nevada, not Ohio, where she claimed she was born. I ran a cross-reference on the Nevada number. The screen refreshed, and suddenly the text turned red. Alias found Linda S. Calver. Alias found Belinda Smith. Alias found Lucinda Veras. I clicked on Lucinda Veras. A mugshot from 12 years ago loaded onto the screen. She looked younger, her hair was blonde instead of brunette, and she wasn't wearing the expensive makeup, but the eyes were unmistakable. The smirk was exactly the same. Charges: elder abuse, fraud by deception, grand larceny. I sat back, my breath hitching in my throat. She wasn't an interior designer. She was a professional predator. And she had just locked herself inside a house with my vulnerable, lonely father. The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the motel room, casting long, eerie shadows against the peeling wallpaper. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand, but adrenaline was pumping through my veins, keeping me hyper-aware. I looked at the mugshot of Lucinda Veras again. The woman in the photo was younger, her hair bleached a harsh blonde, but the eyes, predatory, calculating, were identical to the woman currently sleeping in my mother's bed. I needed to move, and I needed to move fast, but I couldn't just run to the police with a mugshot from 12 years ago. They would tell me that people change, that a past record doesn't prove a current crime. I needed proof of current theft. I needed to catch her in the act. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus. Marcus was a former fraud investigator for the state who now ran a private firm. We had worked together on a massive embezzlement case 2 years ago involving a local charity. It was 2:00 a.m., but Marcus was an insomniac. He picked up on the second ring. "Isabella, it's the middle of the night. You're either drunk or you found something juicy." "I found something terrifying, Marcus," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I need you to pull a full court jacket on a Lucinda Veras, Nevada jurisdiction, circa 2012. And I need you to find out where she went after she was released. I need a trail." "Is this work-related?" "It's family-related. She's living with my dad. She just got me kicked out of the house." There was a pause on the line, the playfulness vanishing from his tone. "Send me what you have. I'll have the preliminary report by breakfast." I hung up and turned back to my laptop. Linda, or Lucinda, had made a calculated move to isolate me. She thought that by physically removing me from the house, she had severed my ability to protect Robert. She thought the walls of that colonial house were her fortress. But she had forgotten about the smart home upgrade I had installed for Dad last Christmas. Dad was terrible with technology. He constantly lost the remote, forgot to lock the back door, and worried about leaving the stove on. So, I had installed a comprehensive, integrated system. Smart locks, Nest cameras at the exterior points, and, crucially, a voice-activated hub in the kitchen and the study that doubled as an intercom. I had administrative access. It was tied to my email. I logged into the dashboard. My heart hammered against my ribs as the interface loaded. Status: system armed. I clicked on the activity log. 10:45 p.m., front door locked manually. 11:15 p.m., motion detected. Kitchen. 11:17 p.m., thermostat adjusted to 74 degrees. She was awake. Dad always kept the house at 68 at night. He ran hot. Linda was the one who liked it tropical. I navigated to the audio settings. I couldn't access a live video feed inside the house. We had decided against interior cameras for privacy. But the baby monitor feature on the kitchen hub could be toggled remotely if the user had admin privileges. It was meant for emergencies, in case Dad fell and couldn't reach the phone. I put on my headphones and clicked listen. At first, there was just the hum of the refrigerator. Then, the sound of a cabinet opening. Glass clinking against stone. She was pouring a drink. Then, the sound of a phone dialing. Pick up, a voice hissed. It was Linda. Her tone was completely different from the saccharine sweetness she used with Dad. It was hard, impatient, and gravelly. "Yeah, it's me," she said. "No, he didn't suspect a thing. The daughter is gone. I staged the cash in her room like we discussed. He threw her out in the rain. It was pathetic, honestly. He was crying." I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. Like we discussed, she wasn't working alone. "We need to accelerate the timeline," she continued, pacing. I could hear her heels clicking on the tile. "The daughter is smart. She's an auditor or something. She'll come back with a lawyer. I need to get the power of attorney signed tomorrow. No, the accounts aren't accessible yet. The trust is locked down. That's why I need the signature." She paused, listening to the person on the other end. "Don't worry about Robert," she scoffed. "He's a mess. He's so desperate for affection I could tell him the sky is green and he'd agree. I'll tell him the bank called and said there was a security breach and we need to move the funds to a safe, joint account. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him." I hit the record button on my screen, capturing every second of the audio stream. "Okay, I'll call you when the papers are signed. Get the account ready in the Caymans. I want to be out of here in 3 months, tops." She hung up. I sat in the dark, the recording file saving to my hard drive. My blood was boiling so hot I thought I might burst. She wasn't just stealing $5,000. She was planning to drain his life savings, his retirement, the equity in the house, everything my parents had built over 40 years, and funnel it offshore. I looked at the clock. It was 3:00 a.m. I couldn't storm the house now. Dad wouldn't believe me, and she would claim the recording was fake or out of context. I needed to trap her. I needed to let her make the move and then crush her. I spent the rest of the night drafting a plan. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the lead investigator on the most important case of my life. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the world scrubbed clean and bright. It felt mocking compared to the storm inside my head. I dressed in my sharpest business suit, charcoal gray, tailored, intimidating. I pulled my hair back into a severe bun. I wasn't going there as Isabella the daughter. I was going as Isabella the auditor. I arrived at the house at 9:00 a.m. I knew Dad would be finishing his coffee, and Linda would likely be preparing him for the bank run she mentioned on the call. I didn't knock, I used my key. I walked straight into the kitchen. The scene was domestic and sickening. Dad was sitting at the island, looking pale and tired, reading the paper. Linda was standing behind him, massaging his shoulders, whispering something in his ear. When the door clicked shut, they both jumped. "Isabella," Dad stood up, his face hardening. "I thought I told you." "I'm here to pick up the rest of my things, Robert," I said, keeping my voice cool and detached. I didn't call him Dad. I saw the flinch in his eyes. "And I need you to sign a release form for my medical insurance since I'm still technically on your policy." It was a lie. but it was a boring, bureaucratic lie that Linda wouldn't flag. Linda stepped around the counter, her face composing itself into a mask of tragic disappointment. Isabella, really, breaking in after what you did? I didn't break in, Linda. It's my house. My name is on the trust deed, I said, not breaking eye contact with her. But don't worry, I'm not staying. I just wanted to drop something off for you. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single manila envelope. I tossed it onto the granite island. It slid across the surface and stopped right in front of her. "What is this?" she asked, not touching it. "It's mail," I said innocently. "It looks like it was forwarded from an old address. It's addressed to a Lucinda Veras. Do you know her?" The air left the room. For a split second, Linda's mask cracked. Her eyes widened, her jaw went slack, and her skin paled 2 shades. It was a micro-reaction, lasting maybe half a second, but to a trained observer, it was a confession. Dad frowned, looking between us. "Lucinda who? What are you talking about?" Linda recovered instantly. She laughed, a high-pitched, brittle sound. "I have no idea. Probably some junk mail scam. You know how they get names mixed up on those lists." She reached out to grab the envelope, her nails clicking on the granite. "I wouldn't open that if I were you," I said softly. "It's a court summons from Nevada for unpaid restitution regarding the elder abuse case in 2012. Dad froze. Elder abuse. Linda slammed her hand down on the counter. "This is enough. Robert, look at her. She's deranged. She stole from you, and now she's printing up fake documents to try and smear me. It's pathological." She turned to Dad, grabbing his hands. "Robert, look at me. You know me. You know I love you. She's trying to destroy us because she can't handle that you're happy. She's projecting her own crimes onto me." Dad looked at the envelope, then at me. "Isabella, is this real?" "It is," I said. "And so is the fact that her interior design license number belongs to a woman named Beatrice Clean who died in 1999. I checked the state registry this morning." "Lies," Linda screamed. It was the first time she had raised her voice. "Get out. Robert, call the police. She's harassing me." Dad ooked torn. He was a man drowning in confusion. He looked at Linda's desperate, tear-streaked face, and his resolve crumbled. He wanted to believe the beautiful lie, not the ugly truth. "Isabella," he said, his voice weak, "you need to go. You can't just come in here and say these things." "I'm not just saying them, Dad. I'm warning you." I stepped closer, looking directly at him. "Do not sign anything today. Do not go to the bank. If you sign a power of attorney, you will never see your money again." Linda gasped, clutching her chest. "How dare you? I have been nothing but a saint to this family. I'm trying to protect him from you." "Get out, Isabella," Dad whispered, closing his eyes. "Please just go." I looked at him, seeing the fear and the cognitive dissonance warring in his brain. He couldn't accept that he had been duped. The ego blow was too severe. He needed to defend her to defend his own judgment. "Okay," I said, picking up my briefcase. I looked at Linda. She was breathing hard, her eyes venomous. "I'm leaving, but Linda, one piece of advice." She glared at me. "The next time you talk to your partner about accelerating the timeline and moving funds to the Caymans, make sure you unplug the smart hub in the kitchen. The microphone is very sensitive." I saw the color drain from her face completely. She looked at the small white speaker on the counter as if it were a bomb. I walked out the door, my heart pounding. I hadn't won yet. Dad was still under her spell, but I had rattled her cage. And a rattled grifter makes mistakes. I didn't go back to the motel. I went to Marcus's office. The confrontation had bought me time, but it had also escalated the danger. Linda now knew I was listening. She knew I had her alias. She was cornered, which made her volatile. "You poked the bear," Marcus said, handing me a thick file folder as I walked into his office. "And this bear has claws." I opened the file. It was the Lucinda Veras history. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just the elder abuse charge in Nevada. There was a pattern spanning 3 states. "She targets widowers," Marcus explained, pointing to a timeline he had drawn on a whiteboard. Always within a year of the spouse's death. She infiltrates as a service provider, nurse, designer, grief counselor. She isolates them from the children, claiming the kids are greedy or unsupportive. Then, she gets access to the accounts, drains them, and vanishes. How does she stay out of jail? I asked, flipping through the pages. She gets them to sign everything voluntarily, Marcus said grimly. Technically, it's not theft if they give it to her. She marries them or gets power of attorney and gifts herself the assets. By the time the family realizes, the money is offshore and she's a ghost. She mentioned a partner on the phone, I said. Who is she working with? Marcus tapped a photo of a man in a sharp suit. This guy, Anthony DeLuca, disbarred lawyer, he sets up the shell companies and the offshore trusts. He's the one who makes the money disappear legally. I stared at the photo. I recognized him. That's her brother. She introduced him to Dad last week at a barbecue. She said he was a financial advisor. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank app on my phone, not my dad's account, but mine. Alert, attempted access to safe deposit box 404. She's at the bank, I said, standing up. My dad has authorization on my box because we shared documents after Mom died. She's trying to get into my personal files. She's looking for leverage, Marcus said, or she's trying to plant something else to frame you. She's panicking, I said, grabbing my keys. She knows I have the recording. She's trying to discredit me before I can use it. I drove toward the bank, but halfway there, another alert pinged my phone. This one was from the smart home system. Alert, smoke detector activated master bedroom. My blood ran cold. I pulled over and opened the app. The internal temperature in the master bedroom was rising rapidly. She wasn't just stealing, she was burning the evidence. I called 911 immediately. My name is Isabella. I'm reporting a fire at 42 Oakwood Lane. My father might be inside. Then I called the neighbor, Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins, is there smoke coming from my dad's house? Oh my God, honey, yes, Mrs. Higgins screamed. It's pouring out of the upstairs window. I already called the fire department. Is my dad there? I saw his car in the driveway. Linda drove off about 10 minutes ago in a hurry. She had set a fire and left him there. I floored the gas, running 2 red lights. The investigation was over. This was now a rescue mission. Linda had realized she couldn't get the money quickly enough with me watching, so she had moved to Plan B, destroy the house, collect the insurance payout, and likely eliminate the only witness who could testify against her, my father. When I creached into the driveway, the fire trucks were just arriving. Smoke was billowing from the second floor, my parents' bedroom. Dad, I screamed, jumping out of the car. I ignored the pain in my bad leg, sprinting toward the front door. A firefighter grabbed me. Miss, you can't go in there. My father is in there. He has a bad heart. We have a team going in now. I stood by the ambulance, shaking uncontrollably. I watched as they kicked down the front door. Minutes felt like hours. I scanned the crowd of neighbors, looking for Linda. She was nowhere to be seen. Of course. She was probably halfway to the airport or meeting with her brother to scrub their tracks. Finally, 2 firefighters emerged, supporting a coughing, stumbling figure between them. Dad. I broke past the police line and ran to him. He was covered in soot, his eyes wild and terrified. They sat him on the back of the ambulance, putting an oxygen mask over his face. He looked up and saw me. He pushed the mask away. Isabella, he croaked. I'm here, Dad, I'm here. I grabbed his hand. It was ice cold. She left, he wheezed, tears cutting tracks through the soot on his face. We were arguing about the envelope you brought. She got so angry, she knocked over a candle, onto the curtains. I tried to put it out, but it went up so fast. She grabbed her jewelry box and ran out. She locked the bedroom door from the outside, Isabella. She locked me in. The horror of his words settled over us. It wasn't an accident, it was attempted murder. It's okay, I soothed him, brushing the hair from his forehead. You're safe now, and she made a fatal mistake. What? He asked. She locked the door, I said, my voice hard as steel. Which means the arson investigators will find the bolt thrown, and I have her on tape conspiring to defraud you. I looked at Marcus, who had just pulled up in his car. He nodded at me. Dad, I said, looking into his eyes, I need you to be strong for one more day, because we are going to finish this. We are going to catch her. Dad gripped my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. The fog had finally lifted. The man who had designed skyscrapers was back. Tell me what to do, he said. We didn't go to the police station immediately to file the report. That would have been the standard procedure, the bureaucratic route. But Linda wasn't a standard criminal. She was a performance artist of the highest order. If we just sent the police to pick her up, she would claim abuse, she would claim coercion, she would claim ignorance. She would have Anthony, her fake brother and disbarred lawyer, spin a web of confusion that could drag on for years. No, I needed to break her narrative before I broke her cuffs. We set the trap at the hospital. Because of the fire and smoke inhalation, Dad had been admitted for observation. It was the perfect cover. I had the doctors, who were briefed by the police detectives Marcus had called in, list Dad's condition as critical and unresponsive. We leaked this information specifically to Mrs. Higgins, the neighborhood gossip, knowing it would reach Linda within the hour. Linda, believing Dad was in a coma and likely dying, did exactly what a predator does when they smell blood. She came to collect. She arrived at the hospital chapel the next morning. She had organized a community prayer vigil for Robert. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. Half the neighborhood was there, along with the pastor from Dad's church. Linda was dressed in black, prematurely mourning, sobbing into a handkerchief, telling everyone how I, the estranged and unstable daughter, had likely caused the stress that led to the accident. I watched from the vestry door, hidden in the shadows. Marcus stood behind me, checking his watch. 2 plainclothes detectives were seated in the back row of the pews, blending in with the mourners. She's good, Marcus whispered, a mix of disgust and admiration in his voice. She's about to be done, I replied. I adjusted my blazer, gripped my cane. My leg was screaming from the exertion of the fire rescue, but pain was just fuel now and pushed the doors open. The heavy wooden doors creaked, and the murmuring in the chapel died down. Linda looked up from the front pew. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with performative outrage. You, she shrieked, jumping to her feet. She pointed a trembling finger at me. How dare you show your face here? After what you did, you tried to kill him. The neighbors gasped. Mrs. Higgins looked at me with horror. I didn't try to kill anyone, Linda, I said, my voice projecting clearly in the acoustic space. I walked slowly down the center aisle, the tap-tap-tap of my cane echoing on the stone floor. I'm just here to return something you lost. Get out, Linda screamed, looking around for support. Someone call security, she's dangerous. She set the fire. Is that the story? I stopped 10 feet from her. TH. Had I set the fire? Interesting. Because the arson investigators found that the fire started in the master bedroom near the curtains, and they found something else, Linda. I held up the plastic evidence bag containing the heavy brass bolt from the bedroom door. They found the deadbolt engaged from the outside. The room went deadly silent. Robert locked himself in, Linda stammered, sweat breaking out on her forehead. He was confused, the smoke. Dad didn't have a key to that deadbolt, Linda. Only you did. You installed it last week for security. You're lying, she turned to the crowd, her hands clasped in a plea. She's lying. She's a jealous, mentally ill woman who wants her inheritance. Speaking of inheritance, I cut in, pulling my phone from my pocket. I was curious about why you were so desperate to get Dad to sign that power of attorney yesterday, so I did a little digging into your brother, Anthony DeLuca. Linda froze. He's not a financial advisor, is he? He's a disbarred lawyer with a conviction for wire fraud. And you? I tapped the screen of my phone, connecting it via Bluetooth to the portable speaker Marcus had planted behind the altar earlier that morning. "You are Lucinda Veris." "Stop it," she shrieked, lunging toward me. Marcus stepped out from the shadows, blocking her path. She recoiled, realizing she was physically cornered. "And just in case anyone here thinks I'm making this up," I said, looking at the stunned neighbors, "I think you should hear Linda in her own words. Recorded at 2:00 a.m. the night she kicked me out." I pressed play. Linda's voice, harsh and mocking, boomed through the chapel. "He's a mess. He's so desperate for affection I could tell him the sky is green and he'd agree. Get the account ready in the Caymans. I want to be out of here in 3 months, tops." The color drained from the faces of the neighbors. Mrs. Higgins put a hand over her mouth. The pastor looked down at his shoes. Linda stood alone in the center of the aisle, stripped of her mask. She looked small, vicious, and trapped. "That's fake," she hissed, her eyes darting to the exits. "It's AI, it's edited, you can't prove that's me." "We don't need to prove it's you, Linda," a deep, rasping voice said from the back of the chapel. Linda spun around. The double doors opened again. A nurse pushed a wheelchair into the room. Sitting in it, wearing a hospital gown but sitting upright, was my father. He looked frail, his skin still gray from the smoke, but his eyes were clear and burning with a rage I had never seen in him before. "Robert," Linda whispered, her voice barely audible. "Baby, thank God, they told me you were." "They told you what you wanted to hear," Dad said, his voice rough but steady. "So you would come here, so you would show them who you really are." "Robert, please," she stepped toward him, switching tactics instantly, tears welling up in her eyes. "She's tricking you. That recording, I was role-playing. For a play, I love you, I tried to save you." "You locked the door," Dad said. He didn't shout, he just stated it as a cold, hard fact. "I was screaming your name, Linda. I was pounding on the wood, and I heard you on the other side. I heard you stop. I heard you listen to me scream, and then I heard you run down the stairs." "No," she whimpered. "I trusted you with my life," Dad said, tears finally spilling over. "And you left me to burn for a pension fund." He looked at the detectives in the back row and nodded. "Get her away from me." As the detectives moved in, pulling out their handcuffs, Linda's facade finally shattered completely. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She snarled. "You pathetic old fool," she spat at Dad as the officer spun her around. "You were boring. You were so incredibly boring. You should thank me for making your life interesting for 5 minutes." "You have the right to remain silent," the detective said, snapping the cuffs tighter, I hoped, than necessary. "And you," she turned her glare on me as they marched her past. "You think you won? You're just a lonely spinster with a cane. You'll end up just like him." I leaned in close, so only she could hear me. "Maybe," I whispered, "but I'm a lonely spinster who knows how to do a forensic audit. I found the other accounts, Lucinda, the ones in Nevada, the ones in Florida. We're going to take it all back, every single cent." Her eyes went wide with genuine fear for the first time. I smiled, letting her see the victory in my eyes. "Goodbye, stepmom." The fallout was extensive, messy, and deeply satisfying. Linda, or Lucinda, as the court documents named her, was denied bail. It turned out that flight risk is an understatement when you have 5 aliases and a history of fleeing jurisdictions. The recording I made, combined with the physical evidence of the locked door and Dad's eyewitness testimony, slapped her with charges of attempted murder, arson, grand larceny, and wire fraud. Because she had crossed state lines to communicate with Anthony DeLuca, the feds got involved. That was where my professional expertise really shined. I took a leave of absence from the bank to dedicate myself to the case. I worked alongside the district attorney's office, treating Linda's financial history like the most complex audit of my career. We didn't just look at what she did to Dad, we traced back 15 years of scams. We found a retired teacher in Arizona who had lost his 401k. We found a grandmother in Oregon who had lost her family farm. We found safe deposit boxes under names of dead women containing jewelry, bearer bonds, and cash. Isabella the daughter had been hurt, but Isabella the forensic accountant was lethal. I dismantled her empire dollar by dollar. We recovered about 60% of the assets she had stolen from previous victims. For Dad, we got everything back, minus the house, which the insurance company declared a total loss due to structural damage from the fire. But honestly, that was a blessing. 6 months after the arrest, Dad and I stood on the sidewalk looking at the empty lot where the Colonial used to stand. The rubble had been cleared. It was just a patch of dirt and grass now. "It's strange," Dad said, leaning on his own cane. He needed one now, too, his lungs and heart still recovering from the trauma. "I thought I would be devastated to see it gone. I built that house for your mother." "Mom isn't in the dirt, Dad," I said softly. "And the house had bad memories mixed in with the good ones now." He nodded slowly. He looked older than he had a year ago, more fragile, but there was a wisdom in his eyes that had replaced the naive loneliness. "I'm sorry, Isabella," he said, not for the first time, but perhaps for the most important time. "I pointed at you. I told you to get out. I chose a stranger over my own blood." "She was a professional, Dad. She knew exactly which buttons to push. She preyed on your grief." "That's an explanation," he said sternly. "Not an excuse. I should have known better. I should have trusted you." He turned to face me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You saved my life," he said, "not just by pulling me out of the fire, but by fighting for me when I wouldn't fight for myself. I don't deserve a daughter like you." "Well," I smiled, bumping my shoulder against his. "You're stuck with me, and the new condo I found for us has a guest suite on the ground floor, no stairs, and high-tech security that I control." He laughed, a genuine, hearty sound I hadn't heard in years. "And no interior designers allowed." "Absolutely no interior designers," I agreed. "We decorate with IKEA and duct tape if we have to." Linda was sentenced 3 weeks later. She got 25 years without parole. Anthony turned state's evidence against her to reduce his sentence, revealing that she had planned to overdose Dad with insulin once the updated will was signed. Hearing that in court was chilling, but it finalized the closure we needed. I went back to work at the bank, but I made a change. I transferred out of corporate auditing and started a specialized unit focused on elder financial abuse. I spend my days now hunting down the Lindas of the world, protecting people like my father who are just looking for connection and get caught in a trap. My leg still hurts when it rains. I still have nightmares about the smoke. But when I look at my dad, sitting on the balcony of our new condo, reading his book in peace, I know that every ounce of pain was the price of admission for this peace. I lost a house. I lost $5,000, but I kept my father. And in the end, that was the only balance sheet that mattered.